And we're live, everybody. Welcome to Bloody Mary Brunch. I'm your host, Honstar. It's a Thursday again. Time to drink a few Bloody Marys. Toast everybody that's holed up at home in quarantine. I have with me again my buddy. He's been on several streams with me now. The Rambling Canuck. How you doing today, Canuck?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's not snowing today like it was yesterday, so that's good.
See, it was like 80 degrees here yesterday.
Yeah, shut up. It was snowing.
Well, they call it the Great White North for a reason.
Yeah.
Hey, Rosetta. Good to see you in the chat. How are you, Rosetta? Gaming or what? Good to see you. Chat's starting to fill up. Although StreamYard says there's nobody watching, which is funny because two people just commented.
Well, StreamYard is bad for that.
Oh yeah. It's behind. I don't know. Well, I would say I don't know which worse, but YouTube is obviously worse. It's been super bad here lately on notifying me of streams and stuff like that.
Yeah, live comments, it's better on YouTube than StreamYards because StreamYards is always on a delay.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Rosetta has 9 scheduled shows to host from now till Sunday. Well, you're going to be busy, Rosetta. I do 2 a week, and sometimes that's too many. Not counting the ones that I mod for or whatever. And sometimes that's too much. So I would not want to have to do 9. So how are things up your way, Canuck? How are things looking with the beer bug that's going on?
Oh, it's a bloody stupid mess. They had the great Tim Hortons kerfuffle.
Yeah, you told me about that. Yeah,
all the schools are basically done. It's just a gong show, absolute gong show.
Yeah, they finally announced that here. Originally, schools were delayed till after spring break, which is this week, and then they were delayed till April 30th, and now they've said no more school the rest of the year. So
yeah, both my older kids and my younger kids have been basically told, come clean out your lockers, you're done.
Which I don't have any kids in school anymore, but my wife works at a school, so she was excited about that. But anyway, so has early summer vacation. I said.
Well, see, our prime minister is hinting that if everything is clear by July, he's seriously considering starting next year's school year in July.
So I've heard of rumors like that, but
yeah,
if things clear up by July, you have people that have planned vacations, and like me, I always take some of my vacation in the summer. I still do it because I like to go places in the summer because it's warm. Mm-hmm. But I used to do it because that's when my kids were out of school.
Yeah.
So you have people that have planned vacations waiting to see if they'll be able to go or not. And if you all of a sudden say, "Oh, wait a minute, we're going back to school in July," you're gonna have some pissed off people, or they're just gonna take their kids out of school anyway.
Yeah,
one or the other. If I put down on a condo or bought plane tickets or Disney tickets or whatever,
yeah, we're going. And
yeah, I'm gonna go, especially if I can't get my money back. And I've put my 2 weeks of vacation, the only 2 weeks I have in summer, so I can take my kids somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to me, like I was thinking, no, the pushback on that would be so. It sounds nice now, but the pushback, I don't think they'd be able to do it.
I appreciate your support, Rosetta. While you're making sandwiches, me and Canuck would also like sandwiches, and we like our crust cut off.
They're bad, hon.
I know. I like to mess with Rosetta about making sandwiches. Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag here. It's like part the sky's falling and part nothing's going on. It's kind of weird. It's like 50-50.
Yeah.
It's kind of odd. But you have some people that act like it's just a free vacation, and you have other people who are like, "Oh my God, we're all going to die." And it's kind of a weird mix.
Yeah, I have some friends that are, we talk, and they're like, "Damn it, I'm laid off." And some people just got their job, so they were the first ones to go done.
Yeah.
And then I've got other friends that are like, "Damn it, they made it so I could work from home. What the hell? I'm getting gypped on this one." So it's funny to hear both sides of it.
As far as work goes for me, it's business as usual because I have a so-called essential job.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, I'm off this week because I'm on vacation. I took a week of vacation this week, but I haven't been at work, so I don't know that it's come to fruition or not. But supposedly Monday the 6th, they were supposed to start making masks available to us.
Okay.
At work. So
yeah,
I don't know
if I was still in my industry, I would have been under the essential services because I worked security. So yeah, it would have been business as usual.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens. The governor, I'm not the governor. Federally, they've talked about doing a nationwide crackdown here about making everybody basically shelter in place, and if you leave your house for a certain number of days, they're going to come after you and arrest you or whatever. But unfortunately, I have papers that get me out of that. So
yeah,
I may get pulled over here and there if they really do that. I may get pulled over some. But I have credentials to get me through.
Yeah, we'll bring a whole new meaning to the old comedy skit. Papers, please.
Yeah.
Yeah,
a lot of places are doing no contact delivery. Yeah. So that doesn't really surprise me. Yeah, a lot of them, if you order like Uber Eats or something like that, they'll basically, I think, ring the doorbell and set the bag down and run away.
Yeah, because
it's supposed to be no contact. But I guess we can get into our topic today. We were going to talk about the Mary Celeste, which it's kind of an interesting topic that's always interested me. I've heard about it on different videos and different podcasts and stuff like that. And it's on the surface, it's kind of a freaky, unanswered thing, kind of like the Bermuda Triangle until you really dig into it. But either way, even if it's not some weird, freaky thing, it's still very interesting.
Yeah.
The history of the ship, or should I say the history of misfortune.
Yeah, the damn thing was cursed from dry dock, yeah.
Yeah. JPs or Pez. Hello, JPs. Good to see you. So we can't talk about the Mary Celeste without talking about the Amazon.
Yes.
Obviously. Because the Mary Celeste was originally the Amazon. And it was built in Canada, so that's probably part of its problem.
To be fair, it was the first ship ever made in that shipyard.
Oh, see, I didn't read that part. Oh, really?
Yeah, it was its first ship ever produced out of that shipyard in Newfoundland.
Yeah, that's not a very good track record.
Yeah.
They're asking your resume, and you're like, do I tell them about the Amazon or the Mary Celeste? Do I leave that part out? We've built some ships. We'll just tell you that. Yeah. We have built other ships. And if you give us money, we'll build your ship. Well, what ships have you built? It's kind of
few.
It's kind of a secret.
They were like military projects. We can't discuss them.
It's like government stuff. We can't really talk about it.
NDAs and stuff. I'd love to tell you, but unfortunately.
So the keel of the Amazon, which in the story you'll see becomes the Mary Celeste. The keel of the Amazon was laid in 1860 at the shipyard of Joshua Dewis in the village of Spencer's Island on the shores of the Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia. It was constructed of locally felled timber with 2 masts. It was rigged as a brigantine. She was Carvel built with hull planking flush rather than overlapping. The Amazon was launched on May 18th, 1861, and was registered at nearby, how do you say it, Parsboro?
Pretty close.
On June 10th, 1861. She was described as being 99.3 feet in length, 25.5 feet broad, and had a depth of 11.7 feet and 198.42 gross tonnage. She was originally owned by a consortium of 9 people, headed by Dewis. Among the co-owners was Robert McClellan, the ship's first captain. And here we go into the great story of this ship. Her maiden voyage was in June 1861. Amazon sailed to 5 islands to take on cargo of timber for passage across the Atlantic to London. After the ship was loaded, Captain McClellan, the original captain, fell ill. His condition worsened, and Amazon returned to Spencer Island. Well, McClellan died on June 19th. So there's one strike against her right away. Her maiden voyage, her original captain, who's also part owner of the ship, dies.
Yeah, that's
basically not long out of port.
Yeah, that's an oops. That's an oops.
So John Nutting Parker took over as captain, and they resumed their voyage to London, in the course of which Amazon encountered further misadventures. Shock, shock. She collided with fishing equipment in the narrows of Eastport, Maine, and after leaving London, ran into a brig in the English Channel and sank it. This is, if it wasn't, that wasn't enough to say, hey, maybe we should just set this thing on fire and be done with it and collect the insurance money. I mean, that's the maiden voyage. The original captain dies. You hit fishing equipment and fuck the shit up. Fuck the ship up. I'm sorry. And then leaving London, you finally make it to your destination and load your timber. And then leaving London, you run into another ship and sink it.
That's a bad day at the office, folks.
Yeah, I'm only at like 270 something gaming or what. I have to get to 1,000 before I can even apply for monetization. So I'm quite a ways off. I'm a little over 300 away, 330, 320 something. I mean, not 720 something from being monetized. So if you know 700
Bloody Marys are affecting your math.
Yeah. if you know 720 something people, have them come and subscribe to my channel.
And while they're at it.
Yeah. So Parker remains in command for 2 years, and in Amazon, in those 2 years, Amazon kind of just does normal duty. It was kind of quiet years, unlike the original voyage. It kind of went to the East Indies, England, the Mediterranean. It kind of just did what ships did at that time, hauling cargo around. And nothing really unusual happened. October 1867, the gremlins of the Mary Celeste, the Amazon would catch back up to it. And at Cape Breton Island, the Amazon was driven ashore in a storm. It was so badly damaged that her owners abandoned her as a wreck. They just left it out there.
Yeah,
it's so screwed up. It doesn't say anything about the crew. I'm going to assume that they abandoned ship and everything was all right, because it doesn't really note any misfortunes of the crew in that incident. So I'm going to assume if like a bunch of people were killed, it would probably tell us that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume hopefully they all got away from the ship without any trouble, or nobody died. October 15th of the same year, there was a guy by the name of Alexander McBean that was kind of his thing, was claiming derelict ships, because as the laws of the ocean say, if you find something abandoned or derelict after it sat there a certain amount of time, basically it's finders keepers.
Yeah.
So Alexander McBean would collect derelict ships and then sell them, because even if the ship couldn't be rebuilt, shipbuilders would save money by reusing the keel or reusing the masts or things like that to save money. So he takes on the Amazon. Yeah, he claims the Amazon is a derelict and sells it. Within a month, McBean sold it to a local businessman, who then again sells it in 1868 to a guy named Richard W. Haynes, an American mariner from New York. He ends up salvaging the ship and refitting it. He basically ends up paying around $10,000 to fix the ship and re-outfit it because of the damage.
They added a whole nother deck, and
So from what I've read in today's money, that's like what $100,000 or something like that. Which at that time, I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean, $10,000 in that time in the 1800s, that's quite a bit of money.
Yeah, it's a little bit of change.
So, of course, since he paid the money, he then makes himself captain.
And renames it.
Yeah, and renames it the Mary Celeste.
Which is maritime problem number 1.
Yeah. The ship, as the Amazon, the ship already had 3 oopsie daisies.
Yeah.
4 if you count the captain dying on the maiden voyage. So it had 4 oopsie daisies. And anybody that's read much of anything about boats will read that it's, I about said pirates. Sailors and maritime people are superstitious, really superstitious. It's really bad luck to rename a boat. Once a boat is launched under a name, it's like super bad luck to them to rename it.
Yes.
Whatever it's launched as, that's what it is. Because to mariners, a boat is like a living thing almost.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they ply their trade on it. They use it to sail across the ocean. So to them, they put a lot of faith and honestly become really attached to it because that's their home when they're at sea. So it's super bad luck to rename a ship once it's been launched under another name. So not worrying about that. The people that re-outfit it decide to name it the Mary Celeste. But then it gets repossessed. In October 1869, it was seized by Haynes's creditors and sold to a New York consortium headed by James Winchester. Then for the next 3 years, the composition of the consortium changed several times, but Winchester retained at least a half share through all this money changing hands and consortiums changing and all that other stuff. There's no records of the Mary Celeste trading during these 3 years. I guess it just sat there somewhere. And let's see. So we'll fast forward just a little bit. Let's see. On October 29th, 1872, the consortium was made up of Winchester with 6/12 and 2 minor investors with 1/12 apiece, with the remaining 4/12 being held by the ship's new captain, who will come into the story. Let's see. I got ahead of myself. I skipped ahead too far. Oh, Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs is part owner and is also, as earlier, has made himself captain.
Yes.
Because, I mean, if you're going to be part owner of the ship, you might as well make yourself captain, I guess.
Yeah. Nothing like self-promotion.
Yeah. Let's see. So he makes himself captain. And on, let's see, what's the date on this? I jumped ahead too much. October 20th, 1872, Briggs arrived at Pier 50 on the East River in New York City to supervise the loading of the ship's cargo of 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol. His wife and baby daughter joined him a week later. They would make the voyage with him. On Sunday, September 3rd, Briggs wrote to his mother to say that he intended to leave on Tuesday, adding that, this is an ominous note, our vessel is in beautiful trim, and I hope that we shall have a fine passage. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
No.
I wonder, and I'm going back a little bit, and this is just us making our own opinions. I wonder if any of these people knew that it had been the Amazon and that all those horrible things had happened.
Probably it was not generally discussed.
Yeah, well, especially, well, I mean, I think the people that originally bought it from the guy that salvaged it, obviously they knew, because I'm sure it was still named the Amazon. It was, I mean, even though it was run aground, I'm sure there were still things that let you know it was the Amazon. But by the time it made it this far in its history, to Briggs and them, it was just the Mary Celeste, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Since it had been rebuilt and renamed and all these other things.
The Amazon only had this many decks. The Mary Celeste has another whole deck. It can't be the same ship.
Yeah. So let's see. Like you were talking about, it says that let me find it here. Her length was increased to 103 feet, her breadth to 25.7 feet, and her depth to 16.2 feet. Among the structural changes, a second deck was added. An inspector's report refers to extensions to the poop deck, new transoms, and the replacement of many timbers. The work increased the ship's tonnage by 282.28 tons. So, like you said, it's been considerably
altered,
remodeled, or altered from its original design.
Yeah.
So that going a little bit ahead of what we're talking about, that also makes you wonder. Built on the same keel, basically, it was originally built on. Did that also make the ship handle different?
Probably.
Make it not handle as well or feel different, which will go along with what we're going to talk about here in a little bit about what ends up happening on its voyage.
Yeah.
Because
one would imagine that, it was never designed to be that heavy. It was never designed to be that bulky. It's like when you take a classic car and you change certain things to it, even minor things like power steering affects the handling of what it originally was meant for. And you have to, you can't just put in new shocks. You have to, add other things to it so that it'll actually handle the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, because it's like you said, it changes the center of gravity.
Yeah,
which is somewhat important on an ocean going vessel.
Minor detail.
That's like if you take a truck and lift it 10 foot in the air.
Yeah,
it's not going to be able to go around a corner at 50 miles an hour, maybe like it could have stopped, because you've changed its center of gravity, and if you're not careful, you could roll it over.
Yeah,
basically. So I'm sure that the refitment had some to do with maybe even what ends up happening and what one of the outcomes are to what actually happened.
Well, that, and you have to remember too the time in which leading up to this departure, what's going on. I mean, money is tight. Corners are being cut left, right, and center.
Yeah.
Right. Certain things the ship should have, they didn't have, and it's very bare bones. And right now you're in a time frame where it's high risk for high reward, and some people paid off from the high risk and some people didn't.
Yeah, I mean, the ship was basically redesigned to haul more cargo to make more money.
Yes,
with probably not much thought put into what the refitment would actually do to the seaworthiness or the handling of the ship.
Yes.
All they thought was, hey, if we make more room, we can put more stuff down there.
Yeah.
If we put more stuff down there.
And then even so, I mean, the ship itself was technically overloaded as it is. So even with the extra with the extra space, they, as we'll talk about later, they packed the thing so full that it actually hindered the safety of the vehicle, of the vessel. So yeah, there's that.
So unfortunately, after he loads with his 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, he brings his wife and baby daughter on board to join him on the voyage.
Yeah, because that sounds like a brilliant idea.
Yeah. Excuse me. On Tuesday morning, the Mary Celeste left Pier 50 with Briggs, his wife, daughter, and 7 crew members, which we'll talk about bare bones. Much like the Titanic we talked about. Okay, somebody's spam calling me. I'll turn that off. Much like the Titanic we talked about when we talked about the Three Sisters, they left with one single lifeboat that wouldn't even hold everybody on the ship.
Yeah, and as JP points out in the chat, oh no, a woman on a ship. That's another superstition.
Oh, yeah. That is
another red flag.
So the ship has already had many incidents of oopsie daisies, so to speak. It's been rebuilt, so they've changed all the design and the layout of the ship, added more to the keel that was originally designed another way to be built, hold a certain amount of cargo, and so they've changed the seaworthiness or the handling of the ship. Now they have a woman and a baby on board. It's like, really, come on.
Yeah.
It's like, have you not read like 1800 Sailing for Dummies?
Are you giving fate the middle finger on purpose, or is this accidental?
Yeah. So while the Mary Celeste was preparing to sail, a Canadian brigantine named the Del Grazia, I think is how you say that, was in Hoboken, New Jersey, awaiting a cargo of petroleum destined for Genoa via Gibraltar. This will kind of come into play later. I'm not just adding this for random shit. And it depends on what accounts you read. The captain of the De Grazia was David Morehouse, and I've read some accounts and heard on some podcasts and stuff that the captain of the Mary Celeste and him at least knew of each other. I've read other accounts that say they were actually good friends, and they had dinner the night before the Mary Celeste left port, and that and the theory is that they were both basically taking the same path to Europe.
Okay.
So people are saying that they were kind of from the same area. They did the same things. They probably, they sailed the same area. So they at least knew of each other and could have possibly been friends. And that it would make sense that before he sailed that they could have gotten together to discuss the route, what they've heard of the weather, because the De Grazia was due to sail, a little behind the Mary Celeste and basically take the same route.
Yeah.
So it's it depends on which account you read, which source you look at. I've heard everything from they at least knew of each other to they were buddies and had dinner the night before. So take that for what it's worth. Hey, DJ Odyssey. Appreciate you coming by and giving it a thumbs up. Yeah, I'll try not to fall asleep at 8 tonight. I fell asleep really early last night. So, and the De Grazia will, as Canuck knows, will come into the story not too long into the future. So it says that Briggs and Morehouse share a common interest, and some writers think it likely that they knew each other, even if only casually. Some accounts assert they were close friends who dined together on the evening before the Mary Celeste departure. But the evidence is limited because there wasn't really, of course, notes kept of that or anything. And the only recollection of this is from Morehouse's widow, which was 50 years after the event.
Yeah.
So you can take it either way. They knew each other. They didn't know each other. I would go to say they at least, I'm sure, knew each other.
Yeah, they knew of each other at the very least.
At least in passing.
Yeah.
They at least knew each other because they sailed similar ships. They plied similar trade routes. So
they would have known each other, if not by anything, but by reputation.
Yeah. So the Mary Celeste leaves port, and nobody hears of it until the De Grazia reaches a position, and I'm not going to say the coordinates because it doesn't really matter. The De Grazia leaves, from what I remember, like 8 days behind the Mary Celeste. It leaves New Jersey, basically taking the same route. So it's midway between the Azores and the coast of Portugal about 1 p.m. on Wednesday, December 4th, 1872. December 5th at sea time. Captain Morehouse came up on deck because the helmsman reported a vessel about 6 miles distant heading unsteadily towards them, basically at a collision course. It was headed right for them. The ship's erratic movements and the odd set of her sails led Morehouse to suspect that something was wrong. As the vessel drew close, he couldn't see anybody on deck, and he received no reply from his signals. At the time, they kind of did like they did in World War II. I guess they had like semaphore flags, or because obviously they didn't have radios then.
Mm-hmm.
So they signaled with flags or some sort of signaling device to the other vessel. And so they don't get any replies from their signals. And as the boat got closer to him, he realizes it's the Mary Celeste because, of course, the name is painted on the stern of the ship. So he sends some men over in a boat, a rowboat, whatever you want to call it. The ship's boat is what they call it. He sends a couple guys over in the ship's boat to investigate because obviously it's odd that it's kind of sailing listlessly and he can tell the sails are not really set right and there's nobody on deck. When obviously a ship like that, there should be people on deck. It's a sailing ship.
Yeah,
there should always be people at least milling around on deck, checking the sails, checking the rigging. They board the ship and they can't find anybody. The sails were partially set and in poor condition. Some were missing altogether, and much of the rigging was damaged with ropes hanging loosely over the sides. The main hatch cover was secure, but the fore and lazarette hatches were open. Their covers beside them on deck. The ship's single lifeboat was a small yawl, which I'm assuming is just a certain kind of small boat. Since I'm not a naval professional or anything like that, I'm assuming it's just a certain type of small
probably
boat.
In all likelihood. I think
a certain design of small boat that should have been stowed across the main hatch. It was missing, while the binnacle housing the ship's compass had been shifted from its place and its glass cover was broken. There was about 3.5 foot of water in the hold, a significant but not alarming amount for a ship of this size. A makeshift sounding rod, which is a device for measuring the amount of water in the hold, was found abandoned on the deck. They found the ship's daily log in the mate's cabin, and the final entry was dated at 8 a.m. on November 25th, which they find the ship on December 4th. So the last date is 9 days before the ship's actually found. So sometime between the 25th and the 4th, whatever happens.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into our theories and everything in a minute, but it recorded the Mary Celeste position, which I'm not going to read all the coordinates because it doesn't really matter. But they're off Santa Maria Island in the Azores. And the ship is nearly 400 nautical miles from where the De Grazia actually found it. So it's been listlessly traveling some distance. DeVoe saw that the cabin interiors were wet and untidy from water that had entered through doorways and skylights. I'm assuming because the hatches hadn't been battened down, so to speak. Well, we'll see on nautical things. Batten down the hatches. Everything, though, was otherwise in reasonable order. He found personal items of Captain Briggs scattered throughout his cabin, including a sheathed sword under the bed, but most of the ship's papers were missing, along with the captain's navigational instruments. Galley equipment was neatly stowed. There was no food prepared, which is a lot of the misinformation you read and stories that kind of add more to this. You always run into, there was a full meal prepared sitting on the table. It's like they just disappeared. So there was no food prepared or under preparation, but they still had ample provisions in their stores for the rest of the journey. There was no obvious signs of fire or violence, which would rule out, to me, piracy or mutiny. Or, a fire obviously on a ship is a horrible thing, especially in that day with wooden ships. And not having the fire fighting equipment we have in modern days. The evidence indicated an orderly departure from the ship by means of the missing lifeboat. So he returns to report to Morehouse, the captain of the Grazia, basically what he found on the ship. And he decides to bring the derelict Mary Celeste, since there's nobody on board. It's basically sitting there on the ocean with nobody on it. He decides to bring the derelict ship into Gibraltar, which is 600 nautical miles away. Partly because, well, I would say partly. Basically because he was wanting to get some money off of it.
Yeah.
Because under maritime law, kind of like we talked about it, you could claim a derelict. Under maritime law, under maritime law, a salver, which would be basically somebody rescuing or claiming a ship like that's basically found abandoned. I guess that was what you would call it, would be abandoned ship. I don't know what that would a derelict. I don't know what that would be. A derelict to me, I guess, would be more of a run aground ship, but I don't know the exact term for it. But it being basically unmanned and just randomly floating around the ocean, under maritime law, you can basically claim it, and that's as a salver, as they call it. You would be rewarded with a substantial share of the combined value of rescued vessel and the cargo. So,
yes,
basically, his whole thought was, hey, I can take this into Gibraltar, and the owners of the Mary Celeste, I get a part of what the cargo's worth from them selling it, and I also get a part of what the ship's worth because I didn't just leave it out there to sink.
Yes.
So he divides his crew of 8 between 2 vessels. So you got a 4 crew on each vessel, sending DeVoe and 2 experienced seamen to the Mary Celeste, while he and the other 4 crew remain on the Grazia. The weather was relatively calm for most of the way to Gibraltar. Each ship was seriously undermanned, I should say, and progress was slow because they were undermanned. And then I don't know if I believe this last thing about the fog. Did you read about the fog?
No.
To me, this is kind of one of those additional.
Let's color the story up a little bit.
Yeah, one of those ghost story things.
Yeah.
Because the De Grazia reached Gibraltar on December 12th. So that would be 3 days after they originally encountered the Mary Celeste, if I'm remembering the dates right, somewhere around there. So the De Grazia gets into port, no problem. But the Mary Celeste encounters fog and arrives on the following morning. And if you read some accounts, which this isn't really a blown out of proportion account, this just says, they encountered some fog, so obviously they didn't want to go plying through the ocean at full speed in case there were rocks or reefs or something. If you read some accounts, supposedly the De Grazia and the Mary Celeste were very close to each other, and the captain of the De Grazia said it was like the fog was following the ship and engulfed it. Like a ghost story. This mysterious fog engulfs the ship. But it ended up arriving the next day. It was basically delayed by fog.
Yeah,
I'm sure they had to either go slower or even drop the sails, maybe, and just kind of hang out until the fog subsided. So that basically deals with, I think, the major high points of what we're trying to cover for what we're talking about in the story. We don't really, as far as I'm concerned, unless you have a different opinion, we don't really need to get into all the hearing of Gibraltar and
No.
all that other stuff, because that really, we're kind of stopping at the crew disappearing to me. Mary Mayhem. Sorry, I was on the article. Dark Gift Comics, what's going on, bro? Mary Mayhem. I can't do the hearts like you. This just looks like somebody with claws. I'll have to do a heart in the chat because I can't do hearts. I can't do hearts with my hands. And I didn't even do it right. I can't even do hearts on the computer apparently because I just did that wrong. It just looks like a butt. So
he did it again.
I think the second one made a heart. It should have. It doesn't look like it on StreamYards, but on the YouTube chat, it should have turned into a heart on the YouTube chat.
Okay.
I'm ready for karaoke. I'm ready to steal your man, Mary.
Yeah, one of these days you'll have to. I'll have to get on that and sing because I love karaoke. I go to when I can. Actually, that's one of the things that are pissing me off. Was my daughter just turned 18 in last November, and we went through all the mess of getting her ID and everything else, and it finally came in the mail because they were backlogged just as all this hit. So we were going for my birthday, which is later on this month. We were going to go out, and for the first time, my eldest daughter and I were going to go to karaoke night as father and daughter, and I can't because it's closed. So
yeah, that's a bummer.
That annoys me.
The one thing I think we do need to cover before we kind of discuss what people think actually happened, some theories of what people think happened, because there's several. There's one that probably is the truth. There's one that is.
Well, the one thing I think we should mention before we get into the theories is the fact that
what happened at the end.
Well, during the voyage, that they can actually, it's a fact, they can back it up with historical document, is the fact that during this voyage where these people go missing, the ship not only runs into one storm, not two storms, but three storms before he finally is able to turn away and get out of the bad weather. But the ship is forced through three storms back to back.
Which would explain the rigging. I mean, the rigging could partly be explained by the ship being unmanned. But the damage to me is more explained by them hitting storms.
Yeah.
I mean...
And the water that's taken on, too.
Yes, as far as the Degrassi was concerned, since it was... a handful of days behind the Mary Celeste, weather to them was great. They didn't really hit any bad weather or anything. So to me, that says, like you said, the Mary Celeste did hit bad weather, and that's probably what partly damaged their rigging.
Yeah, and depending on, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but there's the main storyline that's popularly believed now is that it hits those three storms, it finally comes out of it, but when it comes out of it, they're majorly off course, and once then they get a couple of days of smoother sailing, and then another storm hits them. Well, they're off course, and they come across an island that the captain happens to know well, and then we can go into that later. But yeah, so it's just a good run of bad luck.
The only thing I'll skip ahead to, because to me it makes a difference in the story. Just to finish the story of the ship is after the crew disappears, the ship is salvaged. Basically, it continues its career. It's sold between some other people. But in November 1884, Parker, ends up being one of the owners, conspired with a group of Boston shippers who filled the Mary Celeste with a largely worthless cargo and misrepresented on the ship's manifest the value of the goods and insured it for $30,000, which would be $850,000 today. On December 16th, Parker set out for Port-au-Prince, the capital and chief port of Haiti. On January 3rd, 1885, the Mary Celeste approached the port via the channel between the, I don't know how to, Genave, I think is how you would say that, island and the mainland, in which lay a large and well-charted coral reef. They say they purposely ran the ship aground. See, this is also a different story than what I've read. I've read it was set on fire at the end, but this is saying they ran it aground and basically, let's see what it says. They basically ripped the bottom of the ship out.
Yeah,
running it aground.
For all intents and purposes, it was scuttled for insurance fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sold the salvageable cargo and instituted the insurance claims for the alleged value. So he basically gets caught in insurance fraud.
Yeah.
So that's how the Mary Celeste basically ends her life, is scuttled on a reef outside of Haiti for insurance fraud.
Yes.
A ship
which is nothing really all that uncommon in that era.
It does, Will Gentry, it does seem like the last few shows of us been talking about boats. It just kind of has happened.
Well, we talk about cursed boats.
Yeah. More specifically,
More specifically, cursed boats.
Yeah, more specifically, we like to talk about cursed boats. So, if there wasn't an unfortunate enough history of what the Mary Celeste was originally, the Amazon, which had a horrible bringing into the world, so to speak. It started off basically being cursed from the moment it was launched. Then it becomes the Mary Celeste and runs into other mishaps, only to finally end its life with its bottom ripped out on a reef, basically scuttled for insurance fraud.
Yeah.
So, I mean, basically from the beginning, this ship was doomed.
Mm-hmm.
And most of those who sailed on it seemed like was doomed because if I remember right, over the history of the ship between the Amazon and the Mary Celeste, there was like 3 captains that died mysteriously. Just like all of a sudden, oh, Canuck's sick, and the next day you're dead.
Yes.
Like, God.
Oh, darn.
There was like 3 captains that died trying to captain this ship. They basically scuttled it because they couldn't make money anymore because sailors being so suspicious. They had to pay them way higher wages than any other ship. They could only haul a certain amount of cargo, so they were basically barely breaking even.
Yeah.
After what they had to pay the crew. So finally they're like, hey man, we could just do some insurance fraud and just get out of this because obviously it's not working.
Yeah, we need to make some money back. We're pissing off some shareholders.
So we'll now we backtrack. Like I said, we went forward a little bit to kind of fill in the blanks of what actually ended up happening to the ship at the end, just because I feel like that kind of fills the story out of what happens to Mary Celeste after what we're more specifically talking about. Kind of ends its history, I guess, so to speak. Leaving out all the Gibraltar hearings and all that, because I don't think that really has anything to do with what we're concerned with, which is the voyage
to the situation.
Yeah, that we're mainly worried about when the captain and the crew and his wife and daughter disappear.
Yeah.
So, like you said, that the popular, probably more than likely the truth is what we talked about for a minute before, the stream. Some other things I've read. Obviously, aliens. That's
Oh yeah,
always
of course.
that's always going to be an option.
That's a de facto.
Anytime anybody disappears, obviously there's going to be some aliens involved, and more than likely some kind of probing. I don't know.
Oh, absolutely.
But that's one of the theories, that the aliens magically appeared and beamed them all off the ship, or took them and just left the ship empty to its fate. Another theory I've read is mutiny.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that theory even
There's
a little
no
bit.
physical proof. There was no physical
Well,
proof.
and the crew that the couple people that DeGrazia sent over, the first thing they said is there's no sign of foul play.
Yeah.
If there's a mutiny, there's going to be signs of foul play.
Yes.
Because, I mean, not necessarily signs of. I mean, obviously, I guess if you come up to me with a knife or a sword, I may just say, "Oh, okay, Canuck, you can have the boat." And technically, I guess you could throw me and my wife and kid overboard, but where's the rest of the crew that mutinied?
Exactly.
It still doesn't explain why nobody's there.
Yeah, and then the certain other theories was because I believe it was 6 or 9 of the barrels were empty upon seizure. So there was a theory that it may be fire, but then there was no physical evidence that there had been a fire on board of any kind. So that was ruled out.
One of the theories I heard was, although there wasn't evidence of fire, it could have either A, been the fumes that drove them off the ship because they were afraid of fire.
Yeah.
Or B, there was a so-called flash fire. You know, if you've ever seen alcohol light on fire, how it all of a sudden burns blue really quick.
Yeah.
But it's not like it really sets a bunch of stuff on fire.
Yes.
That possibly there could have been a flash fire. And I've even heard theories that that's why the hatches were off. It could have been so bad that it actually blew the hatches off, even though it didn't really damage the ship.
Yeah.
And they were afraid that the rest of the barrels of alcohol, since that's all they were carrying was big barrels of alcohol, that they were afraid it was that the ship was going to explode. I've also read theories about pirates.
Yes.
There were certain pirates
into play.
There were certain pirates that were somewhat known to ply that trade route. I forget now what country they come from. Not that it really matters, but again, that theory is basically struck down because, again, there was no sign of foul play. If pirates come on the ship, more than likely somebody's going to put up a fight.
Yes.
And there's going to be blood or something.
And all of the personal effects would have been gone. I mean, there's no signs of theft or disturbance of any kind.
And other than the captain's quarters being kind of disheveled, which to me just says, oh shit, I got to go. I need to grab some stuff.
Yeah.
If you're in a hurry, you're not going to like calmly open cabinets and pack a bag.
No.
You're going to run around and grab stuff. Even if you knock stuff over, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And there was still items left in his cabin, like the sword and some other things that if it was pirates, if it was pirates, they would have stole. And second of all, they more than likely would have stole at least some of the cargo.
And the ship itself.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're going to pirate a ship, you don't just want the money or whatever the crew has on them.
Yeah,
you're doing it because you want the cargo and or the ship or both. You know.
Yeah.
So that kind of strikes it down. And I think JP's or JPez, however you said that, I think he's nailing what is more than likely the truth. And you explain it better than me. So if you want to explain what pretty much now they're saying is, I mean, obviously we can't say 100% because none of us were there. But if you want to go and explain.
Okay, so
what the likely scenario is.
I'm not going to be able to, because I can't remember for the life of me what the device is called. But back in the day, they had a clock that was on each ship, and there was usually several of them, and for every minute was so many nautical miles, and that was how they were able to judge where they were.
it was basically somewhat for dead reckoning navigation, which we talked about when we talked about the Bermuda Triangle in Flight 19.
Yeah. So the commonly held theory is that, well, for one, they only had one clock on ship, which is extremely rare and extremely faulty, because normally you have at least three, so that if one is faulty, you can catch it. You have another one to go off of. This ship was only equipped with one. So the theory is that the device was faulty and was off by several minutes, which would put them off nautical miles. And so he goes to sail out of turn south to avoid the weather, to get out of the weather, because they've just been hit by 3 storms and they don't want to be hit by any more. So they turn away from the weather. And in doing so, he's thinking he's heading towards land, and he's not. He's actually going further south than he should be. So they end up frantically trying to figure out where they are, and then he recognizes land eventually, and he recognizes it because he's passed it so many times. And where the ship, the course that is relatively believed, it takes them north of the island, which is very rare for ships to go north of this particular island, because it is not exactly the best for shipping. There's a lot of obstacles that can sink a ship. So if you're not familiar with it, it's never a good thing to go north of the island. However, on the north part of the island, there's a natural harbor that is good for being able to anchor your ship. It's a natural anchorage. So the theory is that the captain knew this, and to get his bearings, he was going to be there. However, it is believed that as he's doing this, another storm whips up. Now, what they do find when they do salvage the ship is the fact that the ship has 2 pumps to pump out water from
bilge pumps.
Bilge pumps. One of these bilge pumps is non-functional. It's been taken apart, whether for maintenance, whatever. It's speculatory why it's taken apart. The other one seems to be plugged. It's not working properly. So the theory is that they get hit by another storm. And because the ship is already taken on more water than normal, and the fact that they can't pump the water effectively, the captain therefore determines, okay, we can either chance it or abandon ship now, get to the island, get to land, and this way, if the ship sinks, but the crew is safe. So the decision is made. They abandon ship, and they make their way towards the island. However, it's now believed that between the course of where the ship was and landfall, that the small overloaded
which is the part. It was 7 crew, and then him, his wife, and his daughter.
Yeah,
that would be basically 9 1/4 people.
Yeah, so for all intents and purposes, the overloaded dinghy.
Yeah, they had one lifeboat that really wasn't enough for 9 people.
Yeah, so it sinks en route to the land, so they never make landfall. And therefore, the ship is left, and it doesn't sink because they overestimated how much water was actually taken on board. And then going back to the cargo, because the ship was so overloaded in port, they really couldn't get down far enough in the ship to be able to visually inspect just how much water they had taken on, because it was overloaded.
Which goes along with them saying that when they discovered the ship, the crew of the Degrassi that went on board found a makeshift sounding rod. They were trying to figure out how much water was in the bilge.
Yeah,
basically, because like you said, they couldn't get down there and adequately see it or measure it. So, and the other thing I think I left out was when they found the ship, it had 3.5 foot of water in the bilge, which was over what should have been there, but it really wasn't an alarming amount enough
Yeah,
to
it wouldn't be enough to sink the
yeah,
ship.
it wouldn't have been enough to sink the ship, but it was quite a bit over what should have been there.
Yes. And so due to either the captain deciding we're playing this safe, we're hitting our fourth storm, we're already taking on more water than what we should, we have no way to pump out said water, and I can't tell exactly how much water I've taken on. So I'm going to play it safe, and we're going to go. We're going to make for landfall, and unfortunately, he never makes landfall.
Yeah, they basically, and I think some of that could have to do with the fact he had his wife and child on board, which to me was not a good idea.
No, it was never a good
idea. Not even to do with the fact that women on ships are at that time, especially, were bad luck.
Yes.
But that's going to change your thinking as a captain. You're going to be way more cautious because you have your wife and your newborn child on board.
Absolutely.
So he may have chose to try to ride it out while they fix the pumps if they hadn't been there.
Yes.
But like you said, his thought was probably this is our last chance for a definite saving of the crew. We can go to this harbor and eventually somebody will rescue us, or we can ride the boat out. But if we ride it out, there's nowhere else between here and where we're going. So if the boat sinks, we're fucked.
Yeah. So at the time, in the split decision, with the information that he had or thought he had, it was a sensible idea, especially with the fact that his wife and kid were on board. However, like I say, the most common theory is that unfortunately they never made landfall. The other thing that was keenly missing from the captain's room was a photo album that he had sent a letter to one of his other family members, quoting how great it was to be able to have this album, and the album's never been found.
Yeah, so he basically ransacked his room and took what he thought was important, not in a gingerly manner, because they were basically abandoning ship. Because in his mind, we have to go before we sink.
Yes.
So I'm sure, puts his wife and child in the lifeboat, yelling at the crew, get the compass, get the navigational tools, which at that time would be a sextant and a compass.
Yeah.
They take the charts. They take the ship's papers. He leaves the log behind. Like you said, probably goes and gets a few other things out of his cabin for his wife and baby. Gets the photo album, but does it in a disheveled way where he's just flinging stuff out of cupboards. So it looks like his cabin has been kind of ransacked. But it's more than likely just him in a hurry grabbing stuff. Like, hey, we got to go. And they're put into a small boat, a dinghy, whatever, a rowboat, whatever you want to call it, that's not made for 9 people.
And I would almost imagine it was probably not even him that gathered the stuff. It was probably his wife.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good thought. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Because he'd be orchestrating things on deck. And
yeah, he would be orchestrating the crew to launch the boat. You know, and I have read accounts that say there was a line trailing behind the ship. So there were some theories that, you know, there was a flash fire or whatever, and maybe they thought, oh, we'll ride it out. But to me, it's going along with what everybody thinks is what actually happened, because obviously we don't know 100% unless we have a time machine. To me, that says they readied the lifeboat or the ship's boat, whatever you want to call it, and tied it behind the ship. And like you said, he's instructing the crew to get the compass, get the sextant, get this, get that, and probably said to his wife, you need to go get some stuff for you and the baby.
Yeah.
For the island where we're going.
Yeah. Grab me this, grab me that. And
she runs down there and hurriedly gathers things.
Yeah.
while he instructs the crew to ready the boat. And then they all pile into a boat not made for 9 people.
Yeah.
So whether it be another storm, whether it be the boat just getting swamped, maybe the seas were up a bit. Like you said, they never made it to the island, the Azores, to the inlet, the harbor, whatever you want to call it, where the cove, whatever you want to call it, where they were going. And unfortunately, they were all probably lost at sea.
Yeah. Took one risk too many.
Yeah. And like I said, it would be, of course, hindsight being 2020, it would be interesting to see what the outcome would be if he didn't have his wife and baby on board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he would have probably stayed on board.
I think he would have rode it out until the last minute.
Yeah. But because you have other priorities, shall we say, on your mind, you see land, your ship is in bad straits, and it's almost been over told to you that, well, we're in really bad strait. Okay, well, abandoned ship. We'll deal with it we'll deal with it, but at least we'll all be alive.
And this is our last chance for land.
Yeah.
If we pass up this chance, there's nothing between here and Europe where we're going.
And he's already determined that his device, the only one he has on ship for navigation, is broken and not working. So it's either go on blindly with a ship that is not up to snuff, or
and already probably damaged to a certain degree from 3 storms. I'm sure when they abandoned ship, the rigging and the sails, or at least the part of the sails that were damaged, I'm sure that happened in the 3 storms.
Yeah.
So he's saying, look, we got a crippled ship. It's not up to snuff. We don't have any pumps to pump the bilge out. This is our last chance for safety.
Yeah.
Let's abandon the ship. And this is on the main trade route. I mean, people go this way all the time.
Yeah,
eventually we'll be rescued by somebody.
And if it is true that he knows that this other guy is coming through behind him, it could be very well thought that it's, well, I know my buddy's coming up behind us in this other ship, so we'll just flag him down and
we go into the safe harbor on the north side of the island. I send some people to the south end of the island, and when the DeGracia comes by, we signal the ship, and the DeGracia rescues us.
Yeah. All will be well. Yeah. Generally. But yeah, it's just a matter of wrong place, wrong time. And they've pretty much been able to prove now with modern technology, going back and looking at it, that where the ship was found, it was pretty much, they can pretty much lay out the course that it took once it was abandoned.
The way the sails were set, and the historical information of weather patterns, sea patterns, they can pretty much figure when the ship became unmanned.
Yeah.
And basically floated listlessly on its own, and basically just floated around till the DeGracia found it.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that the flash fire hypothesis is interesting.
It is very interesting, because the other thing that kind of leads to it, that you would have had that burnt off alcohol, is there was no smell of alcohol aboard ship when the DeGraci's crewmen entered the ship.
But there had obviously been barrels that had been leaking.
Absolutely. And also the interesting part about that is the barrels that leaked were prone to leak because they were made of red oak and not white oak. And the difference between red oak and white oak is red oak has natural holes in it. Why you'd make a barrel to hold liquid that has natural holes in it, I'm not exactly sure, but hey, whatever.
Probably to go along with everything else we've been talking about, probably to save money.
Yeah.
That's
And
probably what,
actually, you can't tell the difference
that's
by the naked
probably,
eye.
yeah, that's
Until you cut it and actually examine it, you really can't tell the difference between red oak and white oak.
the interesting thing about that hypothesis is that's the reason the two hatch covers were off, because
Yeah.
there's really no reason for those hatch covers to be off, especially if they've been encountering storms and already had an abundance of water in the bilge. The last thing you want to do is remove hatch covers. So the hypothesis is suddenly whatever caused it caused a flash fire, which if anybody's ever burned just alcohol, it burns really quick and burns blue, but it doesn't really damage things like a normal fire would. So the leaking barrels of alcohol could have caught fire, could have blown the hatches off, and they could have thought, "Oh shit, we have nothing but alcohol on board. The whole ship is fixing to explode."
Yeah, we're screwed. Time to go.
Yeah. So, which in the end, still either one you go with. Where obviously they had too much water in the bilge, and the pumps, one was taken apart, one was clogged. Or if you go with the flash fire theory, either way,
or a combination of the two.
Yeah, either way, it's we need to get the fuck out of here.
Plus reputation, right? You're going to have at least two sailors that are going to be, this ship is no, we need to get off here, or this ship is going to take us too, right?
Well, and going along with the bilge theory, like we already talked about, they refitted the ship and added a lot to the ship that the hull wasn't necessarily designed for.
Yeah.
So the extra water in the bilge could have made the ship seem like there was way more water in there than there was, because they added so much to the superstructure, added extra deck. If they changed the center of gravity of the ship, the bilge water could have seemed like it was more than it was. And like you said, it being overloaded would also change the handling. So you put those two things together, and the fact that they can't really get an accurate amount of what's actually in the bilge, the pumps aren't working. All of a sudden there's a flash fire. Oh shit, we got to go.
Yeah, and as JP points out, there would have been burnt or singed marks on the rigging, and for all we know, there was, because some of the sails, even when they did recover it, were not in pristine order. They were damaged.
Yeah.
What type of damage? Not exactly all that clear.
Yeah, all the notes of the time say is that some of the sails were partially set, and some of the sails were damaged, and that some of the rigging was damaged.
Yeah,
but it doesn't really say.
It doesn't go into
how.
detail. Yeah.
So that could be from storm. It could be from whatever.
Yeah.
There's no really way to tell, because obviously this was in the 1800s. So,
well, at least they didn't leave the portholes open.
Hey, Tommy, good to see you, bro. So yeah, it's and I agree with you. I think the most likely theory is they thought the ship was doomed. It was going to go down for whatever reason, and this was their last chance to seek land.
Yeah.
And that more than likely, the captain jumped the gun because he decided to bring his wife and young child with him.
Yeah,
and they never made it to that cove or the port or whatever you want to call it on the Azores, because the lifeboat was overloaded. And if the sea, if the sea kicked up just a little bit, the boat was probably swamped.
Well, according to the log, they were hitting winds of about 20 knots. Even in what they were calling calm weather, they were still having wind gusts of up to 20 knots. So you got to imagine that water that they're putting that little overloaded dinghy into is not exactly calm.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's obviously, if it's a good size sea and the boat's already sitting low in the water, it's not going to take much to swamp the boat.
Yeah.
So they lose the boat, and that puts them all in the water. And unfortunately, nobody lived to tell the tale.
Yeah.
Because they were tossed in the ocean for however long, and eventually you run out of energy and you drown, unfortunately. So, it like we said, we'll never know. It could have been a combination of that. It could have been just the water in the bilge pumps, which is the popular conclusion. I think, as you say, that was at least part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Was the water in the bilge, and I still lean towards the refitting of the ship and adding mass to the ship changed the way it handled.
Yeah, I could go along with that, because anytime you change anything in a ship, you're gonna change the dynamic for sure.
Yeah, and change the center of gravity. So while the crew of the DeGrazia looked at it, was like, oh, there's 3.5 foot of water in the bilge. It was more than normal, but it wasn't abandoned ship amount of water.
Yeah.
But maybe the ship handled so much different because of the center of gravity being changed.
Yeah, and made it feel worse than what it was.
Yeah, that the captain thought, this is really bad, and we can't take a good estimate of how much water's down there. We can't pump it out because one pump's took apart for whatever reason. One pump's clogged. So, and I would almost imagine that maybe both pumps were malfunctioned and they were trying to fix the one. And eventually the captain's like, look, we don't have time for this. We got to get out of here.
Yeah.
This thing's about to go.
Yeah. Let's get while the getting's good.
Yeah. We want to leave before the ship goes down. The ship goes down, while we still have a ship under us that we can be about our wits and gather what we need to gather. Let's get in the lifeboat. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. It was probably an executive decision that, and if you look at it in hindsight as 2020, if he had made landfall and the ship had gone down, he had been heralded as the smartest captain who saved his crew and wife and child, and right.
But unfortunately they disappeared and the ship didn't.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah.
And I think it's kind of like some of the stuff we talked about in the Bermuda Triangle. It's such a mystery because the time period, the way technology was, people just disappeared.
Yeah, and because as humans, we don't like simple answers.
Yeah.
It can't be that simple. It can't be that easy. There's got to be something else to this. There's got to be more to it. There's got to be. And we look for things that aren't there.
When in hindsight, and I still think it goes back to he should never, which we obviously have already stated, he should never have had his wife and child on board.
No.
And I think that's mainly what led him to decide what he decided.
Yes.
And in the end, he doomed everybody, including his wife and child, trying to save his wife and child. So, Jay, let's see what
JP says that they made landfall and lived out their lives on the island.
I'm pretty sure that since that was on a major shipping route, sooner or later somebody was on that island.
Yeah, and they would have found like remains of the settlement, because you would have had to have at least a house or something.
Because I'm assuming if normally you go south of the island, but captains know if you go north of the island, there's an inlet there or safe harbor, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure sooner or later another ship that was somewhat in distress or was having issues more than likely made landfall on that island to make repairs or what have you.
Yeah. JP says, shh, I've seen too many Disney movies as a child.
it's like Blue Lagoon. They live there for the rest of their lives in a nice little tree house. Uh, and this is one of those things that will never. I mean, obviously now with modern technology, they pretty much, I would say at least 90%, if not more, figure what happened. Obviously, you can never say 100% because we weren't there. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like you. I agree with the bilge pumps were screwed up. They were trying to fix them. They had been through 3 storms. They had took on not knowing how much water. The redesign of the ship may or may not, the handling of it may or may not attributed to the fact that it seemed like they had took on more water. And the captain made the call, possibly because of his family being on board. Let's get the F out of here.
Yeah.
Because we're going down. And
Yeah.
I want to get out of here while we still have a ship to get off of, not wait until it's sinking.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and I mean the other thing that factors into that is, their main way of being able to tell which direction they're going is busted. It's not working.
Yeah. So basically all they had was a compass.
Yeah.
And
which you need to know where you are to be able for that to work properly.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going north. Great. North of what? And once you leave sight of that island, okay, you're going north. Great. Where am I going north?
Yeah, because as we talked about in our Bermuda Triangle talk about Flight 19, the 2 things you need for dead reckoning navigation is a clock and a compass.
Yeah.
Well, if the clock is screwed, if the clock's screwed up, then all you have is a compass. And if you've already got to a piece of land that you are pretty much sure of what it is because of basically being out in the middle of the ocean, let's get while the getting's good, because obviously we don't know where we're going.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, he either flies blind and hopes that he makes it to port, or, and his ship has already taken on water. His wife and child are on board. Then if you do get that sudden flash of that alcohol, even if it is, just a sudden flash, you've got enough where it's like, okay, before something else goes completely screwy, let's get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
We'll deal with the repercussions later. We'll still have our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I think, like you said, there could be a combination. It could be just the water. Who knows? But I agree that of course, everybody loves a mystery.
Yeah.
And we don't know because we weren't there and there's nobody to tell us what happened. So, and there's a lot of the stories you read or a lot of the videos you watch, they add the extra stuff like I was talking about.
Well, and to be fair, Han, even if there was people to tell us, we'd still call them liars and that they had something to do with it and they were part of the conspiracy. I mean, come on.
Yeah, like what happened to the crew of the DeGrazia.
Yeah.
They arrested the whole crew because they thought that they were the ones that had murdered them and threw them all overboard to salvage the ship and make money off of it. You know.
So, like I said, even if there was people to tell us, I mean, if we want to make a conspiracy theory, by God, we'll make one. Facts be damned, damn it.
This has just been one of those stories that's always kind of fascinated me. And I guess it goes back to like we were talking about with the 3 sisters. I mean, how could a ship be so unlucky?
And the other, there was a lot of them back then that were like that. I mean, the Olympic that we talked about the other week there, it was, they should have given up on that theory long before they did. And, and then the Titanic, they have almost the same kind of luck because the engines are so huge that they're sucking in other ships, and it's just
Was it? It wasn't the Olympic or the Britannic that sucked in the lifeboats.
No, it was the Britannic. And the Britannic was the biggest out of the three. I mean, if you really want to get technical, the Britannic had a double hull, which the other two did not. They only had a partial double hull. The Britannic had a full double hull, which is why it was kind of selected for the job that it was selected. It was much bigger. And it was the doors were higher. Everything was so much safer on the Britannic, thinking that the lessons learned from the Olympic and the Titanic were learned and applied to that ship. It was something like 3,000 tons heavier than the Titanic was, because they actually got bigger as they went on. The Olympic was originally smaller in weight, in like my brain is not working, in water displacement than the Titanic. And then the Titanic was smaller than the Britannic. And then the Olympic eventually caught up and surpassed the Titanic because they did an overhaul of the Olympic. And
they originally wasn't the Britannic. They originally wanted to name the Gigantic, and then after the Titanic sank, they were like, maybe.
Well, and then the stupid thing is they still called the damn thing the unsinkable the unsinkable ship.
Yeah, which works so good with the Titanic.
Oh yeah. Oh, but we've made improvements, so it's much better now. It's all good. We fixed a couple of oopsies. There was a couple of design flaws, but we got those ironed out. Now the ship is good to go.
It's funny because Will Gentry is like, every time I come on, y'all are talking about boats. There's just so many interesting stories about ships and what has happened to ships. And, you could fill countless shows.
Well, and the other interesting fact that I found in one documentary that was that I watched during the research for this is that area of ocean between then and now, the number of known derelict ships that are known in that area are something along the neighborhood of 1,600.
Yeah, which and I mean, nowadays we fly from here to there, but at that time, in wooden sailing ships, I mean, a storm was a big deal, and the Atlantic is not. It's a cruel mistress. I mean,
it's not the politest body of water.
Yeah, I've even watched videos of modern boats, making the Atlantic Passage, and it doesn't take but a snap of the finger before the Atlantic goes from being great to being horrible.
Yeah, ships as big as the Queen Mary II have had windows busted on their upper decks because of a wave of water.
Well, and that's with modern technology. That's with modern radar, modern GPS, modern weather reports. All of a sudden, the sea is horrible. So you can only imagine back then they didn't have any of that.
Yeah,
I mean, a storm would just all of a sudden be there. You know?
It's like surprise. Yeah.
So I tend to agree with whatever the course of events were. Something happened that convinced them
that it was better to abandon ship than it was to stay aboard.
That the boat was not the place to be anymore.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, they never made it in the lifeboat.
Yeah, that's pretty much the summary.
But it's still an interesting story.
Oh,
to me, the most interesting part of the story is how cursed the ship seemed from the very beginning.
Like, good run of bad luck, buddy.
And like we talked about briefly, the reason they finally tried to scuttle the ship for insurance money was because they couldn't make money off of it anymore, because sailors got to hear basically the history of the ship and the curse of it.
Yeah, you can call it a turd, but it's still a turd.
and sailors are very superstitious, so they had to pay so much extra money to even crew the ship that it could barely break even. So if a ship can barely break even, what's the use of it?
Absolutely.
So they decided,
especially when times are hard, right? And
yeah.
that's
They
what we're looking
decided
at.
they decided to scuttle it for insurance money because obviously it wasn't going to be a money making venture anymore.
Yeah.
And even if you sold it, it was still the Mary Celeste.
It was still the Mary Celeste, yeah.
Yeah. And it had already been renamed once, and that didn't work out too well. So let's rename it a third time. No, let's cut our losses.
Even that superstition carries on to this day, that ships that are renamed are kind of they've always got that superstition above them.
Yeah, you should never, according to the superstition, you should never rename a ship.
Yeah.
Period.
It happens all the time, but yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, like I said, I have to kind of wrap it up early today, but that takes us to the end. I mean, obviously, there's some stuff after that happened. So if you're interested in what happened to Mary Celeste after it was found abandoned, there are some places online you can look the story up. To me, the most interesting part is what led up to it being found abandoned, and then the fact that it was scuttled in the end.
Yeah.
And to me, the most crazy thing is before it was even the Mary Celeste, what happened to the Amazon?
Yeah.
Because that goes along with what we talked about, the three sisters, and it's like it was doomed from the beginning.
Absolutely.
But before we wrap it up, Canuck, if you want to go on and tell everybody who you are, where they can find you at.
Yeah, I am Rambling Canuck on YouTube, and on Twitter, I am Robert R. Knowles 1, because I had that before I created my channel, and I'm just not going to bother changing it over. And I do science fiction, mainly Star Trek, Star Wars. Sometimes I even dip into wrestling because it's another one of my favorite little things to get into because it's funny. And tonight, mainly Monday nights, I do Monday Night Mayhem with a friend of mine, Sci-Fi Nation. Wednesday nights, I do the live Star Trek Enterprise review with another friend of mine, Captain Trek and LDG. And then tonight, I have what I'm hoping to be my final defense of Picard with the Anti-Trekker on his channel. I have agreed to do one last hurrah defense of the show that I like and not many other people do. So one more time, I'm going into the breach, and this is the last argument to end all arguments, and then I don't want to hear about it until season 2. But that'll be on the Anti-Trekkers channel this evening.
Okay. I appreciate you being with me again, Canuck. We've done several of these shows now. It's always a good time.
Yeah, anytime, my friend.
I'm sorry for having to cut this one short, but like I said, I have an appointment this afternoon, so
it's all good. I got to go bury myself in Star Trek for the next 4 or 5 hours, so it's all good.
I think most everybody that's been here already knows me, but I'm Honstar. If you're not, subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HonstarYT, just my name with a YT at the end. And until next time, I'll see you later. Rambling Canuck, see you later. Well, I'll be back this Sunday with Jackbox Game Night. And I'll be back next Thursday with another Bloody Mary brunch. Don't know what it'll be about. I'll decide between now and then. But everybody have a great day. And until then, we'll see you next time.
Take her easy, folks.
If this is your first time joining us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HonstarYT. Good night, everybody.